All right, welcome everyone. So excited to bring you Dr. Mary Tunn. She is an assistant professor and digital humanities librarian at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. She delights in helping librarians, researchers, and artists imagine new possibilities for their work through thoughtful engagement with digital tools. Her approach to AI is informed by her experience as a composition instructor and digital publishing specialist. In her research, she uses machine learning to study the global history of projection. So without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Tunn. Thank you.
And thank you, Diana, for such a warm welcome. I'm so excited to be talking to all of you today. I know it is election season, and we're all thinking about how AI is influencing that. So it's my joy to talk about deepfakes, how computers see and mimic us. Today's slides are at go.illinois.edu/AI for Rails. The link is case sensitive, so if you need to go back and refer to those or follow up or investigate some of the links that we're talking about today, the links are in the slideshow. It will be available after the presentation. So that link again is go.illinois.edu/AI for Rails. So one of my my goals for today is to help you be better prepared to recognize deepfakes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a video of a side-by-side of a real person and a deepfake person. Now, this person happens to be a faculty member at the University of Illinois in the business school, Robert Brunner, who created an AI avatar of himself to teach a class on disruption. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show the video once. I'll open up a poll and I'll show you behind the scenes what that poll looks like, and then we'll replay the video. But I want you to be thinking about which of these Robert Brunners do you think is the real Robert Brunner? Is it Robert Brunner on the left, who's A, or Robert Brunner on the right, who's B? So here's the video. There is no audio, or there's some light little music in the background. Okay. So before we take another look at this video, I'm going to share a link to the poll for you to take. And you can see on my screen, I don't see who's responding what. So please don't be shy. Just make your best guess. And we'll come back to this video at the end of the workshop and see if our responses has changed. So are we ready? I have some votes are real, so please put your responses in that link to Slido, that quiz, so that we can see which the broader patterns. So we got some votes in the chat, but use the Slido. All right, so here we go. Oops. Okay. Let me do we'll do this one more time. Here we go. Here's the QR code. Oh, it says there's no active polls. Let me fix that at the moment. Let me see. Poll settings. It's visible. It's public. Now it should be there. So you can try the link again. There it is. It's working. One more time with gusto, just to respond to the poll. For those of you who've missed it, here's the QR code. Lock in your votes. We seem to be divided. Whoops. Let's see what we got. So we got 28 votes, 31. So most people are saying A on the left, B on the right. We got a couple. We're feeling A, the Robert Brunner with a pin. Interesting. We'll come back to this. So I'm sure many of you have heard the story about Taylor Swift's situation, where Taylor Swift posted to Instagram that she was supporting Kamala Harris for president. What I found really interesting about this particular moment and this particular story was that AI played a role in her decision to make her opinion public. So from her post, she said, recently I was made aware of that AI of me falsely endorsing Donald Trump's presidential run was posted to his site. It really conjured up my fears around AI and the dangers of spreading misinformation. It brought me to the conclusion that I need to be very transparent about my actual plans for this election as a voter. The simplest way to combat misinformation is with the truth. And you see what Donald Trump posted on the left versus the real picture of Taylor Swift on the right. So AI is continuously cropping up as a political tool, but also as a tool of misinformation and disinformation. And so part of my role as digital humanities librarian at the University of Illinois is to not only explain how these tools are working, but also preparing people to evaluate and spot deepfakes. So goals for today, we're going to describe how deepfakes work, what's happening in the black box, and how are things like the fake Robert Brunner created. We're going to consider current applications and implications for deepfakes, not all of which are political, and there's some really exciting applications for deepfakes in the entertainment industry. And then we're going to wrap up by talking about how to spot a deepfake. And again, the slides are at go.illinois.edu/AI for Rails. Okay, so
Dr. Tun,
yes.
if I could just pause for a second.
Mhm.
I do have some people with their hands up, so I just wanted to let them know if they have any issues still they can chat me directly, and I will work to look and fix what they need to be fixed. So if you still have your hands up, please, and you have an unanswered question, just you can send a chat to host and panelists, and I will get to it as soon as I can. All right, thank you. Sorry.
Yeah. And again, apologies for the Slido not working initially. We've been putting links to the Slido in the chat, and the links to the slides should also be in the chat as well. Fabulous. Okay. I have the chat, just so everybody's aware, I have the chat open, so I'm doing my best I can to monitor the chat, but I can't see raised hands at the moment. So I'm really sorry that I missed that. And thank you, Diana, for flagging that was an issue. Okay, how computers see and hear us. So when we talk about a deep fake, we're talking about a brand of computer or a technique from computer science that's used to study patterns across a large body of materials, whether that's images, text, or video. So the deep part of deep fake gets its name from a technique called deep learning in computer science that's used to study patterns across large quantities of images, sound, and video. And we'll talk about how that pattern recognition works in just a moment. Secondly, deepfake tools apply what they've learned about how humans look and sound to create new arrangements of pixels that mimic the human face and voice. So deepfakes get their name from deep learning in computer science, and we're really talking about pattern recognition. So how this process works is it begins with the basic building blocks of an image, a pixel. So AI tools break images down into pixels. They look for patterns in those pixels, and then they use patterns to generate new arrangements of those pixels, aka a new image. So when we're talking about pattern recognition in images, it's breaking the image into pixels. It compares each pixel to the surrounding ones, and it looks for three key things. First, it looks for the red, blue, green color values. It looks for contrast for outlines. What is the general shape of a thing? And then it looks like for contrast for texture. Is it something solid like my shirt, or is it something that's more patterned? Once it's recognized those patterns, it uses those patterns to identify segments. So in this image to the right of the bicyclist, there are actually 6 segments. You'll see 3 here around the people and 3 here around the bicycles. Once it's identified the key parts of that image, it will then classify those features. So it will say these 3 are people and these 3 are bicycles. Which brings me to my favorite problem in all of computer vision, the Chihuahua or blueberry muffin problem. So using this technique to recognize patterns in images can go wrong. So computers can have trouble distinguishing between these images because they have similar RGB values, they have similar outlines, and they have similar textures. If you've seen the Mitchells versus the Machines, you'll know that there's that reoccurring joke where the computers have trouble recognizing the family dog and they can't classify him as dog, pig, loaf of bread. This is the reason why. So this means that computers understand how parts of the body should look, things like hands, but it doesn't necessarily understand the underlying anatomy, which is why we get eldritch horror images like the hands with 6 or 7 fingers. If you've ever generated an image of an octopus, you'll have these kinds of tentacles that reconnect with each other. That's because the computers understand how how they look, but not necessarily how they work or how they operate. Hands is actually one of the key pieces to look for when we're looking at AI generated content because it has such difficulty replicating hands accurately at the moment. Okay, so moving from two-dimensional to three-dimensional images, when we're talking about deepfakes and replicating how the face moves, we need to account for that it is a three-dimensional object. So there are techniques that not just recognize patterns in two-dimensional images, but then use those patterns to construct a three-dimensional object digitally. When we're using photographs to do this, this is a process called photogrammetry, and it's often used in the cultural heritage sector to create 3D models of objects and from historic collections. In the entertainment industry, applying this technology has been around for a while, but the breakthrough movie for being able to deepfake an actor's head was the movie The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, starring Brad Pitt. In the early days, they had to coat Brad Pitt in this phosphorescent paint so that they could track the features of his face. And they used Paul Ekman's facial action coding system to record 70 facial expressions, filmed those from multiple angles, and then used those to create a digital model of Brad Pitt's head. So using the same kind of pattern recognition techniques that you find in approaches to two-dimensional images, but now thinking about that as a three-dimensional object. Now, this technique has come a long way since The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. We have, if you've seen Free Guy, there's a, a, a beefier Ryan Reynolds as a plot point in the movie. There's also de-aging Harrison Ford in the latest Indiana Jones movie. All of this is based on patterns from film of these actors and how their head moves in three-dimensional space, and using those patterns in pixels to recreate that as a three-dimensional object. It's then taken and then implanted on the like the actor's body digitally, creating a pretty spectacular visual special effect. Okay, we've talked about images, but what about sound? Surprisingly enough, sound and replicating sound is actually an image recognition problem. So, the two aspects of sound that matter when we're talking about training AI on voices, we're thinking about frequency. So, this is the pitch. Something that has a high frequency or high pitch is going to be up here. Something with a low frequency is down here. The wavelengths are longer. So, we have pitch. And we also have amplitude or intensity. Is it something that is fairly loud and sharp, or is it something that's more in the background and quieter? So it takes then pitch and frequency, intensity, and represents those visually. So pitch is the higher something is, the higher up on the graph it will be. And intensity, it's representing it as color. So this is a visual representation of the phrase 19th century. And you can see kind of where the syllables are more intense because the colors are more intense here. And you can see the frequency go up and down as time moves on in the graph. These visual representations of sound can get pretty complicated. So this is a soundscape of Mount Rainier or Mount Rainier. Depends if you live in Seattle and are constantly pelted by rain, if it's Mount Rainier or Rainier. But you can see that we can use image recognition techniques to identify and pull out different aspects of the soundscape. So insects, jets, bird, aircraft, things like that. So what deepfake tools are doing is that they're using image recognition to study patterns in sound. They're creating a model, a representation of how that what those patterns look like. Usually models will be gender specific and language specific. So you'll see models for a British woman speaking, a British man speaking, or a Londoner speaking, or a London, woman speaking. And from that model, it can replicate voices if it can correspond, like this bit of text corresponds to these sounds. Okay, so I'm going to play for you a song that was generated from audio. Now, audio generation tools use those patterns to recreate visually what a song should sound like. But this process isn't perfect because sound travels in waves and we have these pixels. So there's always going to be that gap between this very kind of crunchy representation of sound and something that's a little bit more natural, like the sound of my voice as a wave. So we can hear artifacts or the vestiges of this process by some of the glitchiness in audio generated sound. So what things that you'll notice in the song, it's catchy, but it sounds kind of generic. The voice will sound garbled. That's not your speakers. It's actually the artifacting in the song where it's having trouble replicating patterns in 2 dimensions and then translating that visual representation of sound into a wave. And the instruments are a little bit too accurate. They miss they kind of lack that organicness that we get in live performance or when a human is manipulating an object. So I want you to pay a special attention to the voice. It will sound garbled. This particular song is in Old English, so it's easier to spot how garbled it sounds because of you don't have to pay attention to how or what they're actually saying. It starts off fairly quiet. There are all sorts of fun experimentations with AI generated sound. So for example, if you want to hear Johnny Cash sing "I'm a Barbie girl in a Barbie world," that was created by training a model on Johnny Cash's work and then replicating his voice, but with different words and a different melody. We'll talk about legally where that sits in just a minute. Oops. All right, so use cases. We've already talked about how AI is being used in the entertainment industry, and its best application is to help us communicate and to tell stories. And one of the ways that it does that is by creating a more seamless experience when we're doing lip syncing or dubbing. So here's an example. The original movie is a rated R movie, so there's an expletive, I think it is bleeped out in this clip, but I just want to give you a heads up. There is an expletive in this clip. But what you'll see is the process of using image recognition and that 3D modeling to map the movement of the actress's lips and then revise that as the movie is dubbed in different language and like going from rated R movie to PG-13.
Now we're stuck on this stupid tower in the middle of nowhere. And I don't blame you, and now we're stuck on this stupid freaking tower in the middle of freaking nowhere. And it's all my fault. 軽蔑してるよね。仕方ないよ。Y es todo por mi culpa. Now we're stuck on this stupid tower.
Excuse me. All right. So, in a related note, one of the applications for AI that's being experimented with at the University of Illinois is creating an AI avatar with HeyGen. So our Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning has access to this tool. And it's using image recognition tools, not just to create AI avatars and generate a video of yourself for text to speech, but it also has a really cool feature where you can use your voice, but speak in a different language. So the idea here is that these avatars are helping to promote cross-cultural communication and the creation of learning materials more seamlessly. It also can be helpful to preserve anonymity. So if you don't feel comfortable using your voice or your face, you can then use an AI avatar to represent your thoughts and the material that you want to present. Okay. Now, the entertainment side is really exciting. We've all seen it in action in the movies. But of course, there is an incredibly sinister side to the use of deepfakes, especially when we're thinking about the use of deepfakes in the political sphere. So there have been instances where politicians have been posting deepfaked images that represent um, a version of themselves that they want to present, but may not necessarily be true. We've also seen, especially with Russia, Ukraine, that Russia is using deepfakes, especially deepfakes of President Zelensky, to promote disinformation. The most disheartening aspect of deepfakes is this statistic, 98%, in that it's estimated that 98% of deepfake uses right now are to generate erotic content. And most of that is being done without the consent of the people that it's representing. It's really upsetting to see so many women who are creators, content creators, who are being victimized by this particular technology, and we don't yet have the legislation that's caught up to regulate unauthorized AI deepfakes. So speaking of the legal situation, here is a quick snapshot of the legal landscape. I will say that we are having a more in-depth conversation about AI text mining and copyright with our copyright librarian in a couple weeks. The registration link is in the chat, and I invite you to join us for that. Well, our copyright librarian will be presenting. She's incredible. So some of the content that you're about to see is drawn from her. But when we're thinking about the legal status of creating deep fakes on copyrighted content, so far the courts have upheld the training of AI models as fair use and transformative use. So fair use allows for limited use of copyrighted material without permission from the copyright holder for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, or research. Courts have found that text and data mining are quintessential fair uses. So when we're talking about using deep learning to study patterns, that generally gets categorized as something that is text and data mining. Transformative use. So this is related to fair use in that a transformative work is one that alters the original work with a new expression, meaning, or message. And the argument here is that the original content, say a video or a photo, was meant to be viewed by humans. It was shared in the context of the social media. And what AI is doing is taking that and turning it into a mathematical representation of pixels. And that is often enough to justify it as a transformative use, because it is not just changing it from one medium to another, but it's fundamentally altering the nature of the work by representing it mathematically. Now, those of you who are familiar with fair use are already spotting like, but what about its impact on artists? So one of the pillars of fair use is its market impact. And this is, I think, where artists are pushing back the hardest, in that even though AI can't replicate one-for-one an artist's content, that would be a violation of copyright because it's not a transformative use. Artists are still pushing back on the fact that AI has affected the marketability of their work, and therefore should not be considered a fair use of it. Okay. I'm going to mention this foundational court case really quickly, but Authors Guild versus Hathi Trust set the precedent for text mining and this sort of mathematical representation of patterns as fair use. So it's still up to the courts to decide whether or not this is fair use. And I'm going to speed through these because I thought some of these were hidden. So they're still in the PowerPoint for you to go back to if you want to learn more. Okay. So the big question, can I use this video to train AI? Most copyright experts at the moment think that the answer is yes, but there may be other measures preventing you from using the text. So examples are the terms of service and the licensing agreements. DeviantArt, for example, which is a platform for artists, has an option for people to opt out of the AI clause so that their work isn't being used to train a model. Terms of service and licensing agreements also affects the ways that libraries can use their subscriptions and their collections for text mining purposes. So the same rules that are limiting the use of training an AI model are also limiting the ways that researchers are studying discussions in their field through natural language processing and text mining. Okay. So here's an example of terms of service. Terms of service are the things that we all kind of skip through and then click, yes, I agree. But TikTok's is particularly insidious because by using TikTok, you hereby grant us an unconditional, irrevocable, non-exclusive, royalty-free, fully transferable, perpetual, worldwide license to use, modify, adapt, reproduce, and make derivative works of, publish, transmit, distribute to authors, other users, any of your content. So this is one thing that we emphasize to practicing artists here at the University of Illinois, to be very careful about what you're posting and where you're posting it, because the terms of service can determine so much about how that image is then being used to train AI. Speaking of TikTok, so one of the most prominent examples of artists pushing back against deepfakes is Bev Standing. Her case is a bit unique in that it wasn't that her voice was being stolen from content that she was posting to TikTok. It was a process that was a little bit more convoluted. So she made recordings that she created for the Chinese Institute of Acoustics Research for a text-to-speech tool. This is fairly common form of voice acting work, and it's usually governed by licenses or terms of use that govern how a particular recording can or can't be used. It was that series of recordings was reused by TikTok without her consent and without compensation. She sued for damage to her brand, and she settled outside of court. But I guarantee you that if you are anywhere on the internet, you probably have heard Bev Standing's voice, and I'll play a little clip for you now.
Anywhere you hear a voice and don't see a face, it's kind of what I do.
And now it seems she does a lot of this as well.
Hi, TikTok. My name is Misty. How text message?
So if you've heard that voice, you've heard her voice.
Anywhere you hear a...
Okay. So now let's talk about how to protect your image and voice before talking about how to spot a deepfake. So tools that we recommend to protect yourself: the University of Chicago's Glaze introduces noise to an image that disrupts the image generation process without compromising its appearance to a human viewer. So you can see an example of unprotected images and protected images, and that by adding those extra pixels, it makes it difficult for a computer to see the patterns in those pixels. Chicago's Nightshade goes one step further in that it's not just adding random noise, but it's actively trying to trick the AI model into thinking an image of a cat is an image of a dog. So it's really, really disruptive and fun in that way. Anti-fake is a Python script that introduces noise into audio files to prevent deepfakes. So it's the same sort of approach as Glaze and Nightshade, only it's adding those additional pixels to the two-dimensional representation of sound. Okay, how to spot a deepfake. One of the methods that we've been recommending is SIFT. So first of all, stopping. A lot of the AI generated content is evocative. It's meant to invite an enthusiastic and immediate response, and that by stopping, it gives us room to take more actions before we do anything with the information that's being presented to us. So we recommend investigating the source. Where did this image come from? Who is posting it? Looking for other sources, so finding better coverage to see if the content that we're seeing matches broader news stories. And then tracing claims to their original context. For images in particular, reverse image searching can help. So tools like TinEye and Google Lens and Google Image Search can help you identify the original source of an image. So going back to the initial example of Taylor Swift, Trump, and TinEye, when I put the image of Taylor Swift into TinEye and then filtered by the oldest to newest, I got a sense of where this image was posted originally. And what's jumped out to me is this did start on TikTok, and it was posted not by Taylor's official account, but something by conservative Swifties, which lets me know that this account is presenting content through a conservative lens. The next, just below these results, was an article from The Guardian, or from The Independent in the UK, that indicated and contextualized this image as something that was deep faked, as AI generated, as well as other articles in those search results. So reverse image searching can be really helpful to identify, especially visual content. And excuse the animations that didn't quite work. Okay, so the things that I want you to look for when we return to the video of Robert Brunner, there are a couple of visual cues that are dead giveaways for AI generated images. Usually gestures and hands can be a good signal of something, if something is AI generated. So it's me, because I've been using my hands throughout this presentation. I tend to speak with my hands. So I want you, when we revisit the video of Robert Brunner, I want you to see which video has hands that are more visible. Background. So usually the background of AI generated images is going to be fairly consistent or bland. This is because most of them use green screens, and sometimes you can see green screen artifacts. So places where the green screen peeps through just a little bit and it looks like the silhouette isn't quite cut out. When we revisit the video of Robert Brunner, look for examples of those green screen artifacts. So where it tends to appear is if someone's wearing earrings or in the crook of his arm. Camera movement. So unless you're using kind of industrial strength deepfake technology, it's the more camera movement there is, the more difficult it is to map someone's face onto a body. So a still camera movement is one of the signs that something may, or having a still camera, it's one of the signs that you may need to do a little bit more investigation. So sound cues, lack of sounds, or like just generic music playing over could be a sign that you need to pause. Voice tone. So most AI generated image or most AI generated voices have a very limited range of inflection. The voices can go up and down, but not really fluidly or naturally. Content. So unusual tone. Is this person speaking like what they would usually speak? Are they included facts that need to be checked? What's going on here? And then metadata. So some social media tools are now putting AI labels on their content, but sometimes that is buried in metadata or you have to click on the image. So investigating some of the information around the image can help. Also, the date created. If you see an image of a Civil War soldier that is standing next to a UFO that was created in 2024, it's a little bit sus. It's a little bit sus. Now, of course, this image of a Civil War soldier standing next to a UFO may have been recently digitized. And if we found it on a library archive, then maybe we would take it a little bit more seriously. But if it was created in 2024 and posted to Reddit, how often did Civil War soldiers engage with UFOs? Probably not likely. Okay. So I'm going to have to push a couple buttons with the polls. Hopefully it'll work a little bit better this time. So I'm going to say stop to this one. And I'm going to start this interaction. I'm going to put the link in the chat. And give you a moment to use the QR code. I'm going to see if I can view participants. I'm still not able to see thumbs up. Would someone in the chat just verify that you can access the poll? Yes, fabulous. So again, when you view the image of Robert Brunner this time, the things you're looking for are gestures. I see not seeing a link. You can use the QR code, or I'm posting one in the chat. So looking for gestures, how animated is each Robert Brunner? Looking for green screen artifacts, so around the head or in the crook of the arm. The fact that there's no sounds and it's the context in which I'm presenting this is enough to tip you off that one of these is fake. So with that in mind, here's the video again. I'm going to play the video again. I just realized I had been sending messages to hosts and panelists only. The link should now be in the chat for everyone. And I'm going to replay the video. All right, so let's return to our survey results. Okay, so we're a little bit more 50-50. It looks like people are still weighing in. So I'm going to play the video one more time. And remember, you're looking for, are there gestures? Can we see the hands? And are there green screen artifacts? I'll give you a hint and say, keep an eye on his left elbow, which will appear on your right. Okay, so we're a little bit more divided on this one. Those of you who are A is still the front runner. B, there's much more people who are convinced that B is the right answer. So the actual answer is that B is the real Robert Brunner. A is the deepfake. Now, the first time that I saw this, the thing that really threw me off was the pin, because that was an additional detail that I would expect a real person to have, whereas the Robert Brunner on the right, or B Robert Brunner, has more generic clothing. But when we watch it this time, I want you to pay attention to how often you see these hands. So you'll see Robert Brunner's hands appear in the bottom left. You can see his thumbs, whereas they're much more hidden when the Robert Brunner on the right, on the left, is speaking. There's also a little bit of artifacting that's happening here. So those little dots that you see is green screen. Yep. And on the glasses. So we'll take another look. Yeah, so you see those little dots, and this is just a little too perfect. So well spotted to those of you who guessed B this go around. Those are a couple things to look for if you are wanting to get more practice at spotting deepfakes and looking at the difference between what's real, what's remixed, what's deepfaked. I really like this project from MIT, An Event of Moon Disaster. So it is using footage from NASA, but presenting an alternate moment in history. Now, don't feel bad about not being able to spot Robert Brunner. I was throwing you a bit of a curveball because there was no sound. His voice is really grating when he speaks. The AI avatar is not real Robert Brunner's. But because there's so much AI generated content that's circulating without audio, it's often good to practice without the audio and to spot those things. But In Event of Moon Disaster has some additional resources to help you practice and to spot what's real and what's fake. So if you got foiled today, I would encourage you to have a look at that project and some of the behind scenes footage. Oh, I see that some thought the green screen artifacts are a sign of AI. It's a sign that a real person was recording with a green screen. Ah, gotcha. Sorry, apologies for the confusion. Okay, so library resources. The University of Illinois has put together a couple, lots of different resources on AI more generally, as well as deepfakes. We have the Savvy Researcher series. The ones from the Digital Humanities series are open to the public. We also have previous workshop recordings on the Digital Humanities channel, go.illinois.edu/DH channel. This includes AI and copyright, as well as a little bit longer introduction to how images, AI images work, and AI in for generating text as well. We also have a generative AI libguide on how, or just the guidance that we're providing our community. It is coming from a context of our provost encouraged us to, gave us the mandate to ethically adopt AI. So a lot of the guidance that we're providing is within that framework. So just keep that in mind. And finally, I'm happy to answer questions. My expertise is in digital approaches to humanities material with some interest in AI. We also have Sarah Benson, our copyright librarian, who can field questions about how AI is being used, or how AI, what some of the copyright considerations are there. But before we pause the recording and open up the floor for Q&A, I just want to thank you for your patience with the technology issues with the quiz. and apologies for the confusion about the green screen artifacting. I'm really excited about the questions that you have and hope that you found this helpful. Thank you.
Many thanks to you, Mary. Let me